Breaking news on what President Biden called the beginning of an invasion. Good evening. I'm Sade Better-Noir.
And I'm Bill Ritter. Mr. Biden this afternoon laying out a list of financial sanctions against the Kremlin because of their actions in and around Ukraine. Russia President Putin announcing it's impossible to resolve the issue through diplomacy. And just in, word that Ukraine's president is calling up some of his forces as the threat from Russia swells.
Their artillery and firepower growing on the border. We're on the ground in Ukraine with a live report. But first tonight, the new developments from Jim Dolan. He's in the newsroom. Jim?
Sade, wars don't always start with shock and awe. Sometimes they start with an idea, and that may be how the war in Ukraine began, when Vladimir Putin yesterday recognized as independent two sections of Ukraine. That may have been the first shot across the bow of European and American unity. Today, Europe and the United States and other countries in the world all fired back. Smoke rose from a power station in Ukraine today, the result, the government said, of shelling from Russian separatists. Still, the military part of this war remains relatively quiet. The diplomatic portion is just gearing up.
Who in the Lord's name does Putin think gives him the right to declare new so-called countries on territory that belong to his neighbors? This is a flagrant violation of international law and demands a firm response from the international community.
But just as the invasion is not yet fully engaged, initial Western sanctions only hint at what is to come. Today, the Biden administration imposed a full blocking of two large Russian banks, and Europe announced somewhat lesser restrictions on additional banks. U.S. imposed comprehensive sanctions against Russian debt, and Germany announced that it would halt the regulatory process of the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline that would have brought Russian gas into Europe. Some want even more harsh sanctions now in light of Russia's actions.
The reality is this is aggression, pure and simple. It is an invasion, pure and simple. And this time, the United States and the West must act decisively.
President Biden has the power to issue strong, swift, and effective sanctions, and he should do so in coordination with our allies to counter the Russian invasion.
But the president says more severe sanctions will be imposed if Russia attacks. Biden also announced U.S. troop and equipment movement to Eastern Europe today to defend NATO allies there.
We're united in our support of Ukraine. We are united in our opposition to Russian aggression. And we're united in our resolve to defend our NATO alliance. And we're united in our understanding of the urgency and seriousness of the threat Russia is making to global peace and stability.
Well, Russia, meanwhile, is showing no signs of backing down. Today, the Russian parliament authorized President Vladimir Putin to use the Russian military abroad, presumably in Ukraine. And Putin demanded Ukraine recognize Russia's claim to Crimea and relinquish all of its advanced weapons. Ukraine did not respond, but doesn't seem eager. President Biden said today he hopes diplomacy still has a chance in Ukraine, but he did not seem optimistic. Bill?
Jim Dolan with the latest from Ukraine. Jim, thank you very much. We go now live to the city of Lviv in Ukraine. That's where the U.S. Embassy is now based after the capital city of Kiev became too dangerous to go to. It's a place now where U.S. diplomats can stay in Poland at night and then drive back to Lviv during the day. It's right on the border, and that's where ABC News reporter Aaron Katersky is live tonight. Aaron, good to see you, old friend, and tell us what the state of play is right there, right now.
Oh, Bill, we heard tonight from Ukrainian President Zelensky, who said he was calling up reservists with combat experience, just the first sign of a mobilization. Not a full-scale mobilization. He is very much still trying to project a sense of calm here and readiness, and to walk around the streets. It's almost shockingly normal to see people in cafes, going to school, going to work. But elsewhere in Ukraine, there are signs that President Putin's moves have already started to disrupt the rhythms of daily life. In the eastern regions that President Putin says he now recognizes as independent from Ukraine, we've seen smoke rising from a power station. We've heard reports of shelling and troops on the move. And the question is, what does President Putin want to do next with troops that he has already ordered in? Does he want to push the boundaries of these little statelets that he's recognized, or does he want to try and occupy the whole of this country? That's what's really worrying the U.S. and its allies, and President Biden today is moving some troops around of his own, about 800 of them, have already been deployed from elsewhere in Europe to places like Latvia and Lithuania and other Baltic states to make sure that's a defensive move to show that the U.S. is serious about protecting its NATO allies.
And we know, Aaron, listen, Russia is a major military power in the world, but Ukraine has hundreds of thousands of troops that it could call up and engage in warfare. This could become, not a pretty scene there pretty easily.
Oh, in fact, the U.S. expects this to be quite bloody if Putin decides to make a move to try and decapitate the Ukrainian government with street fighting and a good deal of human suffering. The U.S. has already warned, Bill, that there's a list that the Russians have drawn up to try and inflict terror on the people here, people like journalists and dissidents, anybody anti-Russian, and try to purge society of those views through capture or killing, kidnapping. They say that's very much in the offing here, if in fact President Putin decides to go through with it. Right now, the Ukrainians are saying that they are ready for anything and that they are not going to panic. They are not going to cede anything either to the Russians. So the next move really is up to Vladimir Putin.
All right, Aaron Katerki, keep us posted. You're live in Lviv for ABC News. We thank you for joining us on Eyewitness News. Aaron, good luck to you. Be safe.
Good to see you, Bill. Thanks.